Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Jungle. By Upton Sinclair. Upton Sinclair, an American journalist and writer, released his first book, The Jungle, a novel about life in the jungle, in 1906. Sinclair was a journalist whose primary goal was to uncover government and corporate corruption. He set out to write The Jungle in order to shed light on the precarious working conditions faced by immigrants in Chicago in the early 20th century. A year later, he published the book as a full-length novel in the socialist newspaper Appeal to Reason after spending 7 weeks working secretly in the meat-packing operations of Chicago's stockyards. According to the novel's public reaction, most people were more concerned about the filthy circumstances and health concerns at meat-packing plants that he wrote about. The Meat Inspection Act was enacted in response to widespread public protest. Although many noted the description of working conditions, the novel was referred to as the Uncle Tom's Cabin of Wage Slavery by Jack London, a notable author. A Lithuanian immigrant who comes to America with his fiancée and her family, Jurgis Rutkus, is the protagonist of the tale. Moving to Chicago's meatpacking area is the family's best hope for a brighter life in America. A real estate agent conned them into renting a property, and they soon discovered that the region is overrun with immigrants searching for employment, so finding a job wasn't simple. Rutkus eventually joins a union and the Socialist Party, which is all documented in the book, exposing the appalling working conditions in the slaughterhouses. Ono Lukashaite and Jurgis Rutkus, two Lithuanian immigrants who had just arrived in Chicago in the early 1900s, are getting married. The wedding feast is celebrated in accordance with Lithuanian tradition in the region of Chicago known as Packing Town because of its close ties to the meat-packing industry. After the meal and dancing, it is customary in Lithuania to ask visitors to leave a donation to help defray the costs of the celebration, but the Lithuanians in attendance had no extra cash to spare because they are factory workers. Thivas Elijah, or wedding ceremony, can cost the newlyweds up to a year's salary. After seeing so many people leave without paying, Ona begins to worry about how she will pay for the wedding. To comfort her, Jurgis promises he'll work harder and earn more money to pay for it, and that they'll find a solution. If a man is fortunate enough to have a job, he is expected to arrive on time every day. 1 minute late results in a 1-hour salary loss, whereas 20 minutes late results in the loss of a job. Getting laid off means spending weeks in doorways looking for a new job. It is in this chapter that the reader learns a little more about the characters Jurgis and Ona. Jurgis emigrated to Chicago from Lithuania's remote hinterland. Ona had caught his eye at a horse fair, and he quickly fell in love with her. It turned out that her father was unwilling to part with his daughter when Jurgis tried to haggle with them about their daughter's hand in marriage. Jurgis briefly lost hope after his disappointment. Sadly, Ona's father passed away while he was a little child, leaving his family in a dire financial situation. However, Ona was unsure if she wanted to leave her family behind and migrate to the United States, where earnings were greater and the money was better. Teta Elżbieta's brother, Ona's stepmother, knew about a man who went to America and made it big. This prompted the family to begin putting aside money for the trip's expenses. As a result of Jurgis' contribution, they decided to travel together to the United States. Jurgis' father, Didi, and Ona's cousin, Maria, also agreed to join them. Maria, a tall, slender woman from Serbia, had high expectations for her job search in the United States. When they arrived in Chicago, the group's funds had run out. Jonas, Teta's brother, stumbles onto the delicatessen of a man he knew who had made a fortune in the United States by pure accident. However, Jurgis is not a millionaire. His delicatessen may be his pride and joy, but he's drowning in debt. It turns out that the residence he recommends for them to live in is a squalid boarding house run by a destitute widow. People who reside in the meatpacking district are always surrounded by stench and smoke. Food is being scavenged from the landfill by hungry schoolchildren. At first, Jurgis is repulsed but yet fascinated by the flurry of activity taking on in the slaughterhouses. Trapdoors in the floor allow him to sweep the entrails of butchered livestock. While doing this, he makes about $2 an hour for 12-hour workdays, which he considers to be a success. Maria takes a job painting the labels on cans in her family. Didi, on the other hand, is unable to find a job because of his age. There are only Ona, Teta, and the tiny children who are not working since Jurgis won't let them. In particular, Jurgis wants Stanislavas, the 13-year-old brother of Ona, to go to school so that they can grow up together. The family comes across an advertisement in the newspaper advertising the sale of 4-bedroom houses for $1,500. They decide to speak with a real estate agent because the monthly cost is only $12. An agent is a well-dressed, Lithuanian-speaking man who catches their eye and woos them. In the end, Ona is able to meet their financial obligations because of the calculations she performed. However, when the family arrives, they find the house to be smaller and less new than they had anticipated. There are no other rented properties in the area that appear to be in use. In spite of the warnings of Jokubas, the family closes the sale without Jurgis. As soon as Jurgis gets back, he takes the deed to a lawyer, who informs him that the property is just a rental, making it simpler for the bank to remove tenants who failed to make their monthly payments. As a result, Jurgis and his family are able to relax a little more in their new house. Jurgis is startled to learn that most slaughterhouse workers dislike their employment, as he appreciates the fast speed of his work. In his mind, he thinks they're just lazy and refuse to join the local union. When Didi is offered a job in exchange for a third of his salary, he accepts. To put it another way, his profession entails packaging infected meat for consumption by humans. In the course of Jonah's investigation, he discovers that his predecessor was killed in a workplace accident. In the slaughterhouse, animals such as calf fetuses and ill animals are routinely butchered and packed, and Jurgis is well aware of this fact. Grandmother Mayaskina, an elderly immigrant woman in the town of Packingtown, informs the family that she arrived in the town during a time when most of the town's labor was German. The Irish came after them, and now the Slovaks are taking their position. Generation after generation of immigrants has been crushed by the packing industry. 4 previous families have attempted to purchase the home in which the family now resides but have fallen behind on their payments as a result of the loss of a vital breadwinner. Stanislavas lies about his age to acquire a job running a lard canning machine, and one can get a job sewing coverings on hams in a cellar by bribing the management $10. The man who manages the tavern where Ona and Jurgis Visalija took place owes them over $100 because of their wedding. Workers in Packingtown have a difficult winter because their employers refuse to pay for the heating of the factories, which leads to an outbreak of sickness. A lung infection is to blame for Didi's death. Timotheus, a fiddler, begins courting Maria, and the family finds his fiddle playing lively and entertaining. Timotheus makes a romantic proposal to Maria, and she says yes. After finishing the attic in their family home, they intend to live there full-time. Maria, on the other hand, is out of a job when the canning factory she works for closes. Because his work hours have been reduced, Jurgis has joined the union in protest. At first he has no luck persuading his co-workers to join the union, but as time goes on, he becomes increasingly frustrated. These people's ideas bring back memories for him of how new to the country he was. As Jurgis pays the bills for owning the house, he discovers additional expenses that he was unaware of. They inform him that he is responsible for all taxes, insurance and water charges. In addition, he warns that if the city decides to install a sewer and a walkway, they will be forced to pay taxes for them. Flies swarm over the factories in the summer of the next year, making them swelteringly hot. However, after contesting the theft of a portion of her wages, Maria loses her new employment shortly after starting it. Family members are devastated when Ona learns that she is pregnant and Maria loses her job. Maria manages to land a new job as a cattle trimmer, where the boss is pleased to recruit her because she is legally required to work for half the pay of a man, even though she has the same strength as a man. That Miss Henderson maintains a brothel and that many of the women she employs are prostitutes is discovered by one. When the girls find out Ona is married and a respected woman, they make their lives miserable. Antanas is the name given to Ona's newborn son. Jurgis has a growing sense of responsibility to provide for his family. Ona's health begins to deteriorate as a result of her early return to work following childbirth. Injured one day, Jurgis is told he can't go to work. To avoid losing his job, he'll be out of commission for over 3 months. At that moment, only his infant kid can bring him joy and alleviate his anxiety and frustration. Stanislavas suffers lifelong joint impairment as a result of frostbite on his hands. When Jonas leaves the family, 2 additional small children, Nikolaus, 10, and Vilamus, 11, must drop out of school and work as newspaper salesmen to help the family make ends meet. Christoforas, Ted's youngest child, succumbs to poisoned meat and dies soon after. The rest of the family, despite Ted's anguish, is pleased that Christoforas, who was born with a birth defect and frequently complained, is gone. Maria must lend Ted money to cover the costs of the boy's funeral. In the spring, Jurgis will need to hunt for employment again, but he is so worn out that he has trouble finding an employer who will put his faith in him. To make matters worse, The chemicals in the fertilizer plant that he works in cause him to develop an unpleasant odor. It's Katrina's 13th birthday and she and her brother Antonas, who was born paralyzed, are taking care of the newborn and her other disabled brother, Eusebius. The agony and stifling working conditions that the family is subjected to cause them to give up and become silently frustrated. Jurgis' relationship with Ona begins to deteriorate, and he begins to drink excessively. Despite his best efforts, he is unable to give up drinking because of his strong desire to do so. Antonas gets sick a lot as a kid, which causes him to become underweight and feeble. After becoming pregnant again, Ona gets an incessant sneezing cough. One night, Ona doesn't come home from work and tells Jurgis that the weather kept her at the factory overnight. Ona tells that her boss Phil Connor raped her after everyone had gone home and threatened to have everyone in her family fired and blacklisted if she informed anyone. Jurgis does not believe her. Angry Jurgis rushes to Ona's job and strangles Phil Connor on the spot. Jurgis is outraged. He is taken to the police station after being freed from the man's grip by a few of the other workers. Jurgis is taken into custody and held in solitary confinement with a slew of other male offenders, regardless of their age. Jurgis is awakened by the sound of church bells outside his cell and realizes it is Christmas Eve. When he realizes that he would have to spend Christmas in prison with his family, he breaks down in tears. During Jurgis' time in prison, he befriends a safe breaker named Jack Dwayne, who provides him the location of his mistress and instructs him to search for him there if ever in need of assistance. Jurgis' trial begins, and Phil Connor testifies that he fired Ona for legitimate grounds and that Jurgis then attacked him. Jurgis gets sentenced to 30 days in prison after being forced to utilize an interpreter during his trial. As he knows his family will starve if he is not at work, Jurgis begs the judge for a reduced charge. However, the judge is unmoved. Upon his arrival at Bridewell Prison, Jurgis is forced to crush stone every day as part of his punishment. A few days after arriving in Lithuania, Stanislavas informs him that Ona, Teta and Maria have all lost their jobs and are unable to afford food. Despite their health, Connor has now blacklisted them from a number of factories because of their inability to perform. Maria sliced her hand at work and developed blood poisoning as a result of the incident. The family is forced to rely on the generosity of strangers for meals. A shortage of funds means that Jurgis must remain in prison longer than he was originally scheduled. His home is vacant when he returns after being freed from prison. Upon returning to Packingtown, he discovers that his family has been expelled from their home and have returned to the boarding house they stayed in when they first arrived. His first stop is the boarding home where he hears Ona screaming and dashes to find her before she gets away. Fortunately, Maria catches him and informs him that Ona is about to give birth prematurely. Jurgis begs a midwife named Madame Haupt to accompany him back to the boarding house with the money he scrounged from the women there. In the end, Madame Haupt agrees to work for Jurgis's $25 price after considerable pleading. Jurgis watches a blood-splattered Madame Haupt walk down the stairs around 4 in the morning. The baby has died, and his wife is dying, she explains to him. As she succumbs to her injuries, Jurgis rushes to her aid. He heads to a bar after leaving the boarding house to get drunk. On the next day, Teta pleads with him, reminding him of his responsibility to his son and the necessity of going to work. When Jurgis starts looking for work, he quickly learns that he has been put on Phil Connor's no-work list. When Jurgis runs across an old acquaintance who works at a company that makes harvesting equipment after searching for work for 2 weeks, he is able to land a position there. Jurgis has worked in a better workplace, but the workers are still expected to work at an incredibly high rate. Then one day, Jurgis arrives at work to find that his department has been shut down until further notice. When a wealthy woman spots one of the children scavenging in the dump, she approaches him and inquires about his past. While returning to the boarding house, she is shocked by what she finds, leading her to make a solemn decision. She will write her wealthy husband in hopes that he may help locate Jurgis a job. After that, Jurgis is assigned to work at a mill, and he is only permitted to return to his family's house on weekends. During his time off, Jurgis spends it with his son, whom he cherishes with all his heart. Jurgis returns home from the mill one day to find Antonas dead on the street after a bizarre accident, drowning in the mud. After the death of his kid, Jurgis suffers a mental breakdown that causes him to board any train and get off at whatever station he sees fit. After he disembarks, he takes a bath in a nearby creek and is fed by a neighboring farmer. The voyage of Jurgis begins with odd jobs and food foraging. A new low is reached when he begins to squander all of his money on booze and women. Jurgis returns to Chicago in the fall, when the jobs on farms are no longer available, and he finds work excavating tunnels. Unfortunately, He breaks his arm while shoveling. After 2 weeks in the hospital, he discovers he has nowhere to go when he is finally discharged. He begins living on the streets as a homeless person, vying with other homeless people for some place to sleep at night. Jurgis befriends Freddie Jones, a drunk but well-dressed man, while begging one night. After inviting him to dinner at his residence, Jones also presents Jurgis with $100 cash. At first, Jurgis is shocked to hear that Jones, despite living in a mansion, is actually the son of the guy who owned the first factory in which he worked. Hamilton, Jones's butler, is clearly unhappy with Jurgis' presence in the house and waits for Jones to fall asleep before evicting him. Jurgis walks to a tavern to exchange the $100 note that Jones gave him. Jurgis is told by the bartender that he must first purchase a beverage, and he opts for a 5-cent lager. The bartender then refunds him with 95 cents. Attacks the bartender after realizing what happened. He was taken into custody once more and is now serving a further sentence of 10 days in jail. When Jack Duane and Jurgis are both released from prison, they agree to meet up. He decides to become a criminal because he believes it is the only way he can make a living. A well-dressed guy is attacked and his cash and valuables are stolen by Jack after his release from prison is granted to him and Jurgis. In the newspaper, Jurgis learns that the victim was gravely injured, thus he has a $55 take. His feelings for the victims eventually fade as long as his crimes go unpunished. It takes Jurgis some time to get to know the criminal underside of Chicago before one day Jack is put under the bus and forced to quit the city. Hog trimming plant strike breaks out immediately after Jurgis secures another employment. As one of the few people still working, Jurgis decided to take advantage of the strike to demand a raise in pay. He argues with his desperate bosses for a $3 hourly wage. In addition, he assumes control of the slaughterhouses, where the pigs are put to death. Jurgis confronts Phil Connor once more and attacks him. Upon his release from jail, Jurgis moves to the other side of Chicago. A familiar face tells Jurgis where Maria and Tedda are currently residing when he comes to beg on the streets. During his visit, he discovers that the brothel is under police investigation. Maria explains to him that she and Tedda were forced to turn to prostitution since they were unable to provide for their children in any other way. Stanislavus, too, has died while working. She reassures him that his family does not hold him responsible for fleeing and that they understand he was distraught. Maria admits to Jurgis that she has grown addicted to morphine the day after the prostitutes are released from jail. Jurgis resolves to return to Tedda and Maria, but he must first find a job. In the midst of his travels, he chances upon a political conference and goes inside to relax. Upon realizing this is a socialist meeting, Jurgis is moved to tears by the man's harrowing account of the plight of workers in Packingtown. A man who speaks Lithuanian is brought in to speak with Jurgis after the speech concludes so that he can question the speaker for more information. The man's name is Ostringsi, and he joins Jurgis for dinner and tells him all about the party. Upon his return, Jurgis informs Tedda of the socialist ideology. She's glad he's returned and wants to help out the family financially, so she'll join him at socialist events. Jurgis accepts a job as a bellhop for a Socialist Party official in a hotel. When socialists arrive at the hotel to visit his boss, Jurgis starts talking about his experiences working in the meat-packing sector and becomes a staunch supporter of the party. Maria, on the other hand, informs Jurgis that she is unable to stop working as a prostitute due to her addiction. A prostitute for the rest of her life is what she tells him. He meets with a magazine editor and learns more about socialism's fundamental objective and their revolution's intended outcome. Chicago will be ours, proclaimed a speaker during a rally for the Socialist Party that year. Jurgis Rudkus, the lead character of the novel. Lithuanian-born Jurgis arrives to the United States with the family of his American fiancée in search of a better life. Jurgis soon discovers that finding a job in the United States is difficult, and when he does, he works long hours in dangerous conditions for little pay. Using the character of Jurgis, Sinclair depicts a typical immigrant worker in the meat-packing sector of Chicago, and thus the reader is more likely to feel sorry for him. Throughout the story, Jurgis gradually loses his belief in the American dream, that hard effort can propel you to the top of your field and that anyone can succeed, as a result of the hardships he and his family face. Jurgis' character is forever changed as a result of this ordeal. An idealistic, optimistic, robust young man turns into an alcoholic, malnourished person with poor health due to work-related injuries. The Socialist Party changes Jurgis' outlook on life, and he appears to be looking forward to a better future by the novel's conclusion. Ona Lukashite, Jurgis' wife. Jurgis' robust masculinity contrasts beautifully with Ona's feminine demeanor. Ona is more vulnerable and concerned than Jurgis, therefore he wants her to stay at home and avoid having to go to work at first. The fact that Ona has faith in Jurgis and her family to constantly find a way to make more money is a testament to how much she trusts him. Even when he is sentenced to prison, she sticks by him and defends him. After being raped by her boss, Phil Connors, Ona's first glimmer of connection to the storyline is revealed when she chooses to lie rather than go the police or notify Jurgis. Sinclair wanted to show the value of the family unit as an antidote to capitalism, therefore Ona is mostly shown as a housewife and mother. Jurgis makes another sacrifice to capitalism when he kills off Ona, who died little over halfway through the book. Teta Elżbieta Lukashite, Ona's stepmother. Sadly, Ona's father, Teta's ex-husband, passed away, leaving a hefty inheritance for the family. The tale opens with Teta having 6 children, 2 of whom are disabled. Teta is a character who gradually emerges as one of the novel's most powerful and significant as a symbol of the enduring power of family and tradition. Amidst hardships in the United States, Teta perseveres and eventually becomes the head of her family. Jurgis' macho ego is shattered when she joins the workforce, although she works just as hard as the other characters. It doesn't matter whether it's out of love or practicality, Teta immediately invites Jurgis back into the family and joins him at communist gatherings. Maria Berchinskas, Ona's cousin who agrees to come to America with the family because she does not like the place that she works for in Lithuania. As a result of her physical stature and strength, Maria is able to land a few gigs. Maria, on the other hand, is forced to work as a prostitute after Jurgis abandons the family and becomes addicted to opium. This revelation is made clear by her in her final paragraphs of the novel, when it is stated that the only way for her to have access to opium is to continue working in the brothel. As a child in Baltimore in September of 1878, Upton Sinclair was born into a wealthy family. Sinclair grew up in poverty as the son of an alcoholic whiskey salesman and a devout Episcopalian. Even at 16, Sinclair found it difficult to maintain contact with his mother because of her stringent standards. The Sinclairs were a well-known Southern family, but the Civil War wiped off their fortune, and they became penniless in the years following the conflict. To help his father find a new career, Sinclair's family traveled frequently. To pay for his education, he started writing jokes and essays for boys' publications when he was just 14 years old. At 1897, he graduated from Columbia University and enrolled in Columbia Law School, where he specialized in criminal law. By writing articles for periodicals, he was able to earn a living. While working at Columbia, he began writing pulp fiction novels by using stenographers, who could write up to 8,000 words each day. The following year, he wed Meta Fuller, a boyhood acquaintance, and the two became parents to a child. King Midas was his debut novel in 1901, Prince Hagen, 1902, The Journal of Arthur Sterling, 1903, and Manassas followed shortly thereafter, 1904. His best-known work, The Jungle, was written in 1904 after spending several weeks at Chicago's meatpacking plants as an undercover journalist. Authors, artists, and musicians, editors and professors, and professional men would live together and generate their own food and products with the money from the book. The colony had been established in October of 1906 when it was destroyed by fire in March of the following year, resulting in its dissolution. After that, Sinclair campaigned for Congress as a socialist, but lost. He authored more essays and novels, both fiction and non-fiction, during this period. When Sinclair remarried in 1913, he chose Mary Craig Kimbrough as his second wife, and the two were together until Mary's death in 1961. Sinclair was a prominent socialist politician in the United States who faced a lot of resistance, especially from former President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Sinclair sought for a number of political positions and came the closest to being California's governor, but he was never elected. He married Mary Elizabeth Willis in 1961 and remained married to her until his death in a nursing home on November 25, 1968, when he was 90 years old. Rock Creek Cemetery in Washington, D.C., is where he is buried with his third wife. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.